Hey guys, really excited to be here and get this kicked off. I think this is one of the most exciting panels of today. Some of the coolest products that folks are building here on stage, and hopefully we can hear more about them today with all these great panelists. So the title is called Beyond the Seed Phrase, the Next Generation of Crypto Wallets. Most of the folks here are building wallets of some sort. So as a brief intro myself, my name is Sid Shaker. I work on the blockchain research team at Coinbase. We focus on everything blockchain data related and what's up and coming in the ecosystem. And over here, these guys are building some of the most interesting up and coming apps. So would love to start with a brief introduction from each of you, and then also a one-liner on what you're building. We can start with Ken.
Sure. So I'm Ken, founder of Xverse. Xverse is a Bitcoin Web3 wallet. So our mission is basically to bring Web3 to Bitcoin through our support for ordinals, BRC20s, rare sats, and Bitcoin L2s like Stacks, for example, and other Bitcoin-based protocols.
I'm next. Hi guys, my name is Louis. We're actually building the first hardware wallet that replaces your seed phrase with a simple combination of hardware, mobile application, and social circle. So everyone in the room can actually say goodbye to seed phrases, fraudulent transaction, and asset loss.
I'm Mark. I'm the general manager of Lether, a Bitcoin Web3 wallet. We have our origins in the Stacks ecosystem. We are the original Stacks wallet. And we really believe in empowering a Bitcoin economy across layers. So Bitcoin treated as the L1, and other layers like Stacks treated as L2s, and perhaps even beyond L3s.
Amazing. Hi, my name is Toby Box. I work at IOV Labs. IOV created a Bitcoin sidechain called Rootstock, similar to Stacks a few years back. And we're now working on services and tools for Rootstock to make it easy for builders to build on top of Bitcoin. One of those building blocks is a self-custody B2B wallet.
Very interesting. So it looks like a combination of both builder-centric and then also end-user-facing wallets. In terms of the current ecosystem, what is a kind of key problem or key kind of issue that you feel is lacking in the wallet space, and what are you looking to do to address it? Any one of you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I say traditionally Web3 has not taken place on Bitcoin, right? It's taken place on other L1s. And Bitcoin, despite being the most famous crypto, the original, the most secure, most important, hasn't benefited from Web3 activity and all the use cases that Web3 brings. So we really believe that for that to happen, there has to be a wallet that is designed intentionally for Bitcoin-based technologies. Bitcoin has its own peculiarities, its own sort of capabilities and design considerations. And so as a Bitcoin wallet provider, it's about bringing what you see elsewhere for Web3 to Bitcoin, but actually making it work for Bitcoin in sort of special ways. And also, I think Bitcoin is a platform for particular sort of forms of Web3 that you don't sort of see have as much importance on other sort of platforms.
Makes sense.
I'll go next. So just working on what Mark said, completely agree with that. One of the focuses for us is to make it easy in terms of usability and time to market for those builders that you mentioned. So we're focusing more on the fintech, the Web 2.5, the Web 2 businesses who want an entry point into digital assets, specifically for Bitcoin. So we've prioritized usability and time to market for those builders so that they don't have to waste time learning things like Ethers.js, Web3.js. They don't have to give up all their control to a wallet as a service provider, which could be great, but if they want to fully integrate something into their platform, they can use our product to do that.
I think one of the most recurring themes from Mark and Toby is usability. So for us, it's all about hardware wallets, right? Hardware wallets, up to this day, is very technical to use. So according to our mom test, if you as a user, you always feel intimidated and you feel it's time consuming and it's so technical. So for us, the challenge was, okay, how can we actually create a product that has account recovery and account security while actually preserving the traits of traditional wallets, such as like Ladder and Xverse, which is low transaction fees. You can actually easily integrate it to application and compatible to all kinds of device types. So that's the goal at Rider. So for us, how do you combine the security of hardware wallets with like the usability of software wallets?
Yeah, and for us at Xverse, we wanted to build on the most secure, longest running, largest chain, which is Bitcoin. And why not bring Web3 functionality to Bitcoin, right? So things like NFTs, DeFi, identity, we've integrated all of that into Xverse through all these different protocols like stacks, ordinals, and I think Bitcoin, because of the large number of users and the fact that Bitcoin is the first crypto that most people will learn about, it's like the best onboarding medium for new users coming into Web3. And we should have all these capabilities that didn't exist before on Bitcoin available to new users onboarding.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, regarding users, as you mentioned, Ken, one of the key developments that all of you guys are working on is improving UX and user experience and the design and the flow of users onboarding into the ecosystem. It's a huge challenge for crypto overall. How do you tell your friends who don't know anything about crypto how to get started? What are the first steps that they should take, right? Most folks come through Coinbase, for example. We try to make that user experience as easy as possible. So curious to learn, I mean, starting with Ken, what are kind of the key UX decisions or trade-offs that you've been considering and the choices that you've made in your application?
Yeah, so for us, it's really about simplifying the experience because in Bitcoin, traditionally, like all the Bitcoin wallets are very complicated. It's not really optimized for user experience, and a lot of it is just geared towards like privacy, decentralization maximalists, right? And we wanted to build something that the mainstream user can understand. So some of the choices that we made include you don't need to run a Bitcoin node, right? So there's a little bit of like, you have to trust another third party, but I think for most people that is an acceptable level of risk, right? And it really simplifies the wallet experience because now you don't have to wait for your node to sync, and you can have a mobile wallet with really good experience, which doesn't need to be always connected to the web, right? And we also pioneered a Bitcoin wallet API, which did not exist in the mainstream before, which allows other applications to connect to the wallet in order to extend the functionality. So when we launched SAT Connect, which is the library that provides this functionality, you can now sign any partially signed Bitcoin transaction, PSBTs, which, by the way, has been a standard for a long time, but it just never really saw mainstream use until ordinals came along. So once we launched that, you can now have these trustless swaps of Bitcoin to these ordinals assets, and now even like rare sats and potentially other types of Bitcoin-based assets in the future. On the other hand, like some of the things like change addresses, right? Most Bitcoin wallets have change addresses. So if you send Bitcoin, your Bitcoin now goes to a different address. Now you have like 100 addresses in the same account. It's a little bit hard for people to grasp that, and it's also difficult for developers because now, say you're running like an app that you need to connect to a wallet, you want to know what assets the user has in his wallet. So we can provide them one address, which is what happens in Xverse, and all your assets are in there, instead of giving them, okay, here's 100 addresses, the user's assets are in there, you have to go look for them.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. That change addresses are a huge issue, especially when looking at the chain. Like, how do you know who owns what? It's a complex mess. Luis, you mentioned seed phrases. The title of this talk is Beyond the Seed Phrase. How do you go beyond the seed phrase?
I think it was made for us, the panel, isn't it? Okay, so there's 3 key things that we're doing when we're actually designing a super simple, super secure, and super strong device, right? So, okay, let's break down the 3 things in terms of key design decision. The first one is no single point of failure, right? So it's one single thing that if it gets stolen, they couldn't get access to your funds, number 1. The next one is you want a low mental effort. Like any user should not use their extreme mental capability capabilities in using a wallet. Like my mom should be able to use a wallet. And next is the ease maximum of transaction, right? We want the same capabilities as your banking application. I use Apple Pay quite a lot because of the effortless friction. And that's what we're trying to bring into the space. So for us, the thesis was always the biggest bottleneck for adoption was seed phrases, because you're actually encouraging people to actually, what do you call this, remember these extreme patterns that they're not really used to, right? So for us, okay, you remove that first layer. So instead of offering a seed phrase, we actually offer what we call tap-safe recovery, which cryptographically split your wallet in multiple pieces, and it's spread across what we call rider recovery tag, the mobile application, and optionally your social circle. And all of these things actually works together, so you only need 2 pieces of your wallet to actually recover your asset. And now this is all possible thanks to our own weighted implementation of Shamir's secret algorithm. That's one of the design choices that we make. I hope I broke it down quite a while better. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mentioned PSBTs, partially signed Bitcoin transactions, which are used for ordinals trading, and they're complicated. They're sort of UTXO-based, sort of logical sort of constructions that I think in the early stages of ordinals this year, lots of people had to sort of dig in and think about, okay, how do these work? What are inputs, outputs? How does Bitcoin actually exchange things? And as a wallet, we made sure to simplify that so that users don't have to think about those details. I think for us, we're built on Bitcoin and stacks, and we want to leverage the technology, but we don't want to present that to the user in a way that just adds sort of mental overhead to them. So, for example, with PSBTs, when you sign a trade in Leather, you see exactly what you're going to give up and what you're going to receive, summarized for you. And actually, that sounds maybe simple, but that's actually kind of hard to pull off from just like an under sort of the hood kind of way. But we want to do that for users so that if you're sort of a Bitcoiner, you've sort of been in this for years, or you just showed up yesterday, it's as intuitive to use. And so I think that's happening sort of across the board. That's one example. But I think especially with L2s like stacks, in the future, I think next year this is going to be sort of a big thing. Users will have to go between L1 and L2, and when they do so, we don't want to give them sort of technical work to think about or to do. I think the sort of default is that people have to think about, okay, I got to sort of bridge this asset, and now it's going to be over here, and now I can do stuff, and I got to move it back. And I think we sort of have to sort of not hide that, because you don't want to sort of present something that's false to users. But you have to simplify it and make it just intuitive for people so that they have sort of familiar mental concepts that they can interact with.
Makes sense. Bridging is such a crypto-native thing that we all kind of understand, but it's so hard to explain to other people, right? To
Totally.
folks who are not into crypto. So huge improvement. And for developers,
Yeah, for developers, I mean, that's a really good question that you're asking about the seed phrase. So I agree with all of those answers. For developers, what we have tried to do with the Rift wallet is 2 things. Number 1, address the trust issue by focusing on a self-custody wallet infrastructure. We believe that that is very, very important going forwards to build on top of Bitcoin. And number 2 is to provide programmability. So these guys were mentioning some of the implementations around how to overcome the friction of seed phrases there. I think MPC was mentioned by Louise, and sharding, and also you can, and also multi-sig with social recovery. Another trick is to do a double encryption where you do have your private key, but you store that in somewhere secure. And there are a couple of providers doing this, storing your private keys in AWS HSMs. So these are all different ways of addressing the friction. But what I do know is, going forwards, we will need to have extensibility to provide all of those types of functionalities as they evolve. And that is why we've focused on the smart contract wallet on Rootstock. Because once you have a smart contract as the wallet, it's almost like having a little bot or a little robot sitting on chain for you that you can program, and you can tell it what to do in the future. So you're kind of future-proofed. You're not just stuck with your EOA account forever. So that's the 2 priorities we focused on.
makes total sense. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought this up. It's a kind of a fundamental trade-off between usability and UX and also security, and making sure that the core use case of a wallet is keeping your funds self-custodied in a secure and safe manner, right? So when you manage that trade-off as builders, like what are some elements that you think about, and what are some compromises you won't make? Starting with Ken.
So for us, I think we need to differentiate use cases, right? Because you don't always need the maximum amount of security and privacy for every kind of transaction you make from the wallet. Like if you're going to buy a coffee for a couple dollars, you don't need to use like a hardware wallet and make a transaction there. So, and also like it's slower because you have to be on the layer 1 of Bitcoin. So I think we need to cater the user experience to the use case. If it's a small micro transaction, maybe you don't need to have all this security. You don't need a hardware wallet. You can just have a hot wallet on a layer 2 that has different trust assumptions compared to base layer Bitcoin. And that way, we can still make it very easy to use, but at the same time, you can keep most of your funds on, say, like a hardware wallet or something like Rider, just to make sure that you don't get hacked. But yeah,
Makes sense.
I think for Solom, right, I think we as user, when you start your crypto journey, you always have to choose between usability and security, right? If you go for usability, that means you're using software wallets. And if you want to go for security, you opt in for hardware wallets. And it was never both. But what if I tell you now you can actually do both? What if you don't have to sacrifice usability and security? And that's what we're doing at Rider, right? So for us, it actually took 2 years to actually just design the wallet from like a lot of iteration. And I think for us, it was always, I think the whole space in general is kind of guilty of shipping features after features without actually having product market fit. Crypto builders actually build products for crypto builders, right? I think we can all agree to that. And then for us, okay, what can we do differently? So we went back on the drawing board. We tried to understand from the user journey all the way to like setting a transaction, how can we actually make everything better? So for me, if I'm going to answer the question, I don't think you should trade off usability and security. If you're able to design a really good wallet, you can have both.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's sort of exaggerated sometimes, the trade-off. I mean, hot and cold, there is sort of a distinction. I think users should have different types of wallets. They're going to have different sort of balances they want to manage. They want to sort of use certain hotter ones in certain circumstances, colder ones in others. However, things like Rider, Ledger, other hardware devices, they can plug into software wallets like Leather and be used as a companion. And I think actually Leather, it's not really a wallet. It's a sort of an application for multiple wallets per user. Like we really believe that long-term individuals will have a plethora of different types of wallets that they have to manage for different use cases. That's a good thing for us to embrace. I think it's a matter of providing one user interface that makes it easy for the user to go between them, whether those are hardware versus software or multi-sig versus single sig. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of progress. You don't have to go pull out a vault to enter into a cold storage sort of mentality these days. You can kind of have a cold and hot experience that are pretty actually close to each other as far as the UX is concerned.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The cold-hot paradigm reminds me of like a binary situation, which is like, do you want maximum trust or do you want maximum usability? And these guys were saying, well, okay, when you're buying a coffee, I don't want the vault in Switzerland with the armed security guards. I don't need that to buy my coffee. And absolutely agree with that. The challenge is, how do you cater for that range? How do you cater for that range of situations? Do you cater for it with a range of wallets? What does that mean for usability for the end user? Or can you have one wallet that can handle that range? Also, if you can handle that range with multiple wallets, you need one thing, and that is portability. Portability of value of your assets, portability of your private keys. Because without portability, you will create a lot of friction. to be able to move between the wallets, to move between the range of trust that you need. The second point I wanted to make listening to these guys was sometimes it's okay to put your trust in another entity or another person. Shock horror, not a bank, but a company who specializes in guarding your private keys. That might be okay. The compromise might be that paying for your coffee is really fast. And that's okay. But then sometimes, if you want maximum security, the maximum trust is yourself. I can't think of anything else that would give you more trust than built into your brain, your seed phrase or your private key. You can't beat that. Yes, you can come close to that with hardware devices, of course you can, with a secure element, but you cannot beat memorizing that private key in your brain. So that's the ultimate security, and you never tell anyone. But if you think about it, do you really want a piece of information that is that important forever that you have to keep really, really safe as like the base layer? I think one of the things we need to think about is, okay, I'll keep my private keys and my seed phrase for my really, really large amount of money and my valuable assets. I'll keep that really secure, and then I'll port a little bit of that over to a card or another wallet to pay for my coffee. Okay, I get that. But do I really want to put a lot of effort into keeping that really important thing safe for my entire life? Perhaps it could be better if I kept it safe for a few years, and then I ported it, and then started again. So then you're thinking about, okay, the window of attack here is a few years. Maybe it's not years, maybe it's months, maybe it's weeks, maybe it's days. I don't think anyone's solved this problem yet. We're all focusing on keeping that private key really, really safe. That's great, but why do I have to put in all that effort? Why don't we have a new private key every so often, and then the attack vector is reduced?
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot more fluid than we might sort of think. It's not just one individual with one phrase for the rest of their life. I think wallets longer term are going to be, several of them per person. They're going to be gradients of individual versus social, gradients of custodial versus self-custodial, and they'll sort of match patterns according to people's needs and their use cases. It's going to be sort of a tapestry versus like a single solution sort of situation.
Yeah, good that you brought that up. In terms of looking forward, right? Bitcoin is something that hasn't changed too much in the past decade or so, but now over the last year, we're seeing all these changes, right? Stacks coming up, ordinals, et cetera. Would love to go around and hear from each of you. What's like one thing looking forward 5 years from now that you would like to see people here doing with your wallets? We heard of coffee payments and things like that. Starting with Toby, actually, we can go around.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way. Rather than a feature, I think to answer this question, we will have to collectively solve the wallet trilemma. So the wallet trilemma, in my mind, is some of the things we've been talking about. It is that safety, that protection of your assets, but also the usability. We don't want a lot of friction. And then thirdly, the interoperability. There are trade-offs between those three dimensions. And I think what I would like to see in the next 3 to 5 years are solutions that go towards solving this trilemma, and all of the things you've heard today take us a step forwards to this. Perhaps we could solve the trilemma with things like recyclable private keys, so we didn't have to hold the private keys for our entire lifetime. Perhaps we could solve the other two dimensions with portability solutions, and perhaps in terms of the trust bit, the secure bit, perhaps we could solve that with something called hybrid custodians. So rather than thinking of it's self-custody or it's custodial, maybe there's a new paradigm which is a hybrid, a range of custody options. And if we can solve with those three things, I think then we can deliver that killer functionality for normal people to use in their everyday DeFi life.
Yeah, I'm most excited about, I think, crypto wallets, Bitcoin wallets in particular, becoming central to our economic lives. So you'll be using your wallets to work and charge fees, make your income, pay others for services. And that'll be others as far as humans, but also non-humans, bots. I think we're going to see the digital economy sort of meld with the physical economy. It's going to become less of like a side sort of investment opportunity. I mean, these days mostly people use crypto wallets to invest, right? To speculate, to try things out. It's still very early in that sense because people haven't really incorporated these wallets into their daily lives as far as use cases. But I think if we can encourage or sort of promote, foster Bitcoin-based assets of various types, whether they're fungible or non-fungible tokens, we're going to see that over time, they're then going to play roles that are much more integral into what we're actually trying to get done, whether it's professionally or socially. And so there are a lot of consequences as far as the feature sets and user experiences to that, but I think it's that shift that I think is the most exciting thing, because once that happens, then what we're working on becomes hugely important. Right now, it's very preliminary, I think, what we're working on.
100%.
Yeah, I think for us, it's about the shift in narrative, right? I think for hardware wallets, we always encourage hodling in this space, right? But that doesn't give adoption because Web3 is all about creating these little microeconomies. And if you want a real economy, you should encourage using utilities, bringing productivity to these assets, right? So for us at Rider, we're pioneering an ecosystem of interconnected hardware and software. So for example, at our design, we actually have what we have called near-field communication. And when you combine NFC with digital assets on-chain in the real world, you're able to unlock use cases that could actually provide value to the assets, right? So for example, maybe I go to Bitcoin Unleashed with an NFT in my hardware wallet, or maybe I want to go buy my coffee with a hardware wallet, or I want to trade NFTs with Mark in real life asset in the space with our riders, right? So for us, it's a shift in narrative. I think it's time because in order to get mass adoption, we have to move beyond our browsers, and onto the real world, because that's what most normies would actually accept.
Makes sense.
For me, I think we could probably see the disappearance of seed phrases, like was mentioned earlier. I think with all these things that are being worked on right now, like MPC, account abstraction, these hardware wallets like Rider, there's a good chance that we can take out the seed phrase and just abstract it away through all these different things we're doing. And basically, then the wallet has the ability to kind of disappear into the background, so you don't really have to think about it, right? Like just when you're using an app on the iPhone, you don't have to think about, okay, like this phone is like the device that I have to interact with all these things through. And I think that is the best kind of user experience that wallets can offer. And we're going to be spending a lot of time doing research and making sure that we can get there.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, great points. I see a lot of folks on their phones here. Just a quick show of hands, actually. Who here has actually used Xverse, Rider, Leather, or Rootkit? All right, this is a pretty good show of hands. All right. So to finish off, we're short on time here, but like a quick one-liner on how folks can actually access your product, starting with Ken.
Yeah, so we're on mobile and desktop, so go to xverse.app. You can download the mobile app or the Chrome extension. And if you're a developer, we have documentation on the website, and you can also reach out to us on Discord if you're looking to integrate with Xverse.
We're actually on stealth, but the pre-order will come on November 1, 2023, and we support the most popular chains there is. So you can check us out at rider.id.
Yeah, find us at leather.io. You can download us as a user. Also check out our developer documentation if you want to integrate us into your application. And if you want to try us out just with a use case, go to gamma.io. They have both an ordinals and an NFT, Stacks NFT marketplace, where you can purchase your first asset using Leather.
And just to finish off, if you're a builder interested in building on Bitcoin, check out riff.technology website. And if you're interested in inflation protection use case, remittance use case, or just getting access to digital assets and building on Bitcoin, check it out.
All right, thanks so much.